So when you said 3 minutes, I was a bit worried, and then Jeff and Harry basically gave my speech earlier. So thank you very much, Jeff. You did a better job than I will. Look, there's a lot of nonsense talked at the moment. It's quite interesting about the labour market, and it's quite interesting to come here as the CBI's Director for Employment and Skills and talk about the employment bit of my job, because usually I come to schools conferences and talk about schools. We've done this before, this big change thing. Half of the workforce used to be in agriculture before the agricultural revolution, the industrial revolution. 1% of the workforce is in agriculture now. We still farm things. We still have food. When I go to a certain name brand supermarket on Saturday morning, there will be things there grown in Britain. What happens is we stay employed and we change our skill sets. And critical thing is we help people transition across technology cycles, and what's happening now is just technology cycles are getting shorter. I thought Jeff was really interesting, and we had it picked up on our table a moment ago when you pointed out computer programming was on your list of things that may be under threat. The challenge for education systems in dealing with the new labour market is not that jobs will disappear. The middle of the labour market hasn't disappeared, it's just got a bit more skilled and it looks slightly different. When you see all those hourglass shapes of the labour market that people love to talk about, with high skill, lots of high skill, lots of low skill, nothing in the middle. All that is the jobs that used to be in the middle have disappeared, and there are new middle ranking jobs that are just slightly more skilled, slightly more difficult to get to. Which of course embeds some of the things we all know are problems in our system. If you have good parental support, if you have good support from the school, you are going to find your ways into routes to good employment, and you're going to develop some of those skills that we've been talking about and came up in your poll just now. So my one thing for this morning is, we know this is a challenge. We know we need to do both the core curriculum, because literacy, numeracy and such things, so these things will never go away. But we know we need to develop people. The question now is how we make that happen in an environment where public policy pulls in the other direction, as Schleicher pointed out and Jeff pointed out earlier. My plea is this: the answer is not within our current skill set. GCSE employability is not the answer to this problem. George put it correctly. Knowledge is only knowledge when it's acknowledged, but we can acknowledge it in different ways. And I suspect we will continue to lose the debate until we come up with a system that genuinely rewards schools rather than individuals for investing in some of these skills.
Yes, so hi everyone. So yes, I work for Centre for London, which is a think tank for London, and we have been looking at, I'm trying to get my, oh there's me, I'm trying to get my visual up, there we are. So over the past couple of years we've been running a project called Connecting Tech City, which is really just about looking at how we can connect young people who live in East London more to the Tech City cluster. Europe's biggest cluster of technology businesses in East London, and how that is or isn't working. So we've done quite a lot of work with schools in East London to ask them about their awareness of Tech City and awareness of some of the trends in technology that the tech businesses who are clustered there in East London are looking for, and how well schools are doing at filling that. So I will just give you a few really quick snapshots of the kind of thing that we found, and the sort of thing that we found the largely SME-driven tech industry are telling us about the kind of skills that they're looking for now. So not as future thinking as the content that Jeff was talking about, but really about what tech employers are looking for now and where the gap is within that. So this just a little graphic about the top 10 jobs that 5 years ago weren't really conceived of. So Zumba instructor, Beachbody coach, masseurs, as Jeff was talking about earlier, so maybe that will never die out, but the other 8 of those 10 jobs are technology jobs. And many of them, not all of them, need some kind of technical skill, whether that's computing or understanding computational thinking, a degree of software design. So given that that may, in the future, be reduced and taken over by robots and AI and so on, certainly for now, for Tech City businesses now, that's not the case. So looking sort of 10 to 20 years from here, understanding those skills and being able to understand and work with computational thinking is obviously a really, really big issue. So in the tech industry, there is a really big skills gap right now. I'm sure you're all aware of that, but the kinds of stats. So O2 just brought out some stats recently to show that 2.25 million jobs they predict by 2020 in the tech industry will need to be created, and 750,000 of those are new jobs. So where will they come from, and who will be the people who will fill those roles, and what are the skills needed in order to do that? So a really big challenge for the tech industry that the tech industry is facing, and very, very aware about how they work with schools to help schools develop young people with those kinds of skills. So obviously that's also a massive opportunity for young people, and we need to find ways of connecting young people to those ways of learning that are in school but also outside of school. So I just wanted to show you this, which is another just insight into the way that the tech world works. If you don't know it, I'm sure some of you are aware of GitHub and Stack Overflow and those kinds of platforms that are helping people who understand development to share their skill base and also to, in some senses, compete at how good they are. So this is just a recent snapshot from Stack Overflow of the best developers on that platform. And the bit that's circled is one of those best developers in the world who's actually in California. So it's quite interesting now that those people who are really, really good at this are collaborating and working together and developing their skills from all over the world. So for the UK and young people who are growing up and learning about that kind of thing here, the opportunities are massive. But I think when you look at things like Stack Overflow, you see that developers are competing, but they're also really collaborating. So the whole open source nature of this being really, really important. And how do you teach young people to do both of those things at the same time? And then finally, just one of the innovations that we've seen, which is interesting, employers have said to us, well, we recognise that informal learning, things that young people do outside of school, are just as important as qualifications, but how do we really assess those, or how do we help young people to show what they're learning alongside qualifications, what they're doing in school? So this is just one really interesting example. O2, working with a tech partnership, have just launched the Open Badge Academy, which builds on the Open Badge system that has been working in technology for a bit. But employers looking at how they can formalise this. So employers now working through the tech partnership to develop these open badges that help young people develop bite-sized bits of learning that really are badged by industry and help industry to explain to young people the kinds of skills that they're looking for. So I think this is a really interesting area and something that teachers need to think about alongside qualifications.
Well, probably don't need a mic. Hello everybody, it's great to be here today. This is a big challenge for me, 3 minutes. This is a topic I am so passionate about. I think I just want to start off by thinking how we think in the employment world, certainly how we're thinking in Citi Group at the moment, globally, and how I was also, the experience I had in my prior company as well. There are 7 billion people on this planet at the moment. 3 billion of those people are active internet users. 2 billion of those people have access to a social media account, and 1.6 billion people are accessing their social media account through a mobile platform. So we're going to, and it's interesting hearing some of the dialogue that I was able to hear today, we're all at the same level. These are not different dialogues. I am not talking from an employer perspective. You know, my colleagues around the room are not talking from an education perspective. We're all talking from the same perspective. First point I want to make is it's slightly the wrong story, I think we're telling ourselves, where we think we can sit in a room here today and understand what we need to do to help our young people prepare for the workforce of the future, because they're actually dictating what that workforce of the future looks like. So the answer, I think, actually starts with them. We are executing a talent strategy in Citi at the moment that actually is focusing on what young people are telling us they want as an employer. The whole banking industry, as you know, is going through a crisis of perception, and we're actually changing our whole philosophy about what it is to work in a bank, because we know that young people are selecting employers. We are not selecting them. So that's the first kind of thought I just want to leave you with. We're sitting back now, we're being slightly humble about the population we're trying to affect. The second point is we need to pull together the link between employers and schools, universities and colleges so much more earlier. You know, I stand here before you from a perceived disadvantaged background. I fulfill a lot of diversity categories, but my success has been because there have been multiple influences in my life. I've had great parenting, I've had great sponsors, I've had great mentors, I've had a great education. There are a number of factors that help prepare young people for the workforce of tomorrow, and we need to start thinking a little bit more holistically and systematically rather than individual one-off outreach programs between schools and employers. I think they're great, but I don't think they're addressing the issue systematically. Qualifications and skills, I'm really interested in hearing some of that dialogue. I don't think this is about creating a new qualification. I don't think it's about creating a new skills program. I think it's about rewriting the story we've already told ourselves about what it is to be successful in education and then get into employment. Have a holistic discussion. You can take what we've got today and integrate some of those soft skills: leadership, followership, resilience, political savvy, relationship management, influencing ability, be able to deal with setbacks and failures. You don't have to create a qualification for that. You can incorporate it into our existing infrastructure, and more importantly, I heard on the table today, how we teach that. How do we teach our young people the how of what we do? And that's what we're looking at in employment today. The last thing I would leave you with is I propose that there is a new diversity category: technology. So soon, all of us are going to be on one side and technology's on the other, and preparing our young people to deal with a world of increasing automation, standardization, efficiency. There will be no jobs soon. There will be no jobs. So what does employment of the future look like in that setting? So more questions than answers, but just some thoughts from an employer perspective.
Thank you.
Okay, 3 minutes to talk to you about some work I've been doing with Askell and the University of Warwick. And it starts with a paradox, and the paradox is that young people have never left education, more highly qualified, more years of education under their belt. Well done all you lot. But they're suffering more in the labour market than ever before. If you look at the ratio of youth to adult unemployment, over the last generation, it's doubled. It's nearly 1 to 4 now, 4 young people unemployed for every one. If you look at their earnings, the earnings of young people are flatlined. Employers are discriminating against young people. They don't want them, even though they've got more human capital, more qualified than ever before. And if you've got poor qualifications, you suffer badly. But even if you're a graduate, you're struggling. And over the last few years, I've been trying to make sense of, this paradox. And I talk to people like Andreas Leischer and Chris Husband, and you think about what's happening in the labour market, what's changed over the last generation. They talk about technological change, they talk about globalisation, they talk about labour market deregulation. Well, all these are big things which schools can't do much about. But there are things which have changed, which schools can do something about, which are a way of framing and understanding the changes which we see. And they relate to kind of the complexity of the labour market. It's become more complex now in the last generation. That the competition for work that young people are exposed to is more difficult now. There's more competition. And thirdly, employers are more demanding of different things. And if we take each of those through, we can see the way they play out in schools. If we start with sort of complexity, if we kind of look at the way that, if we imagine young people making investment decisions about the subjects they study, about the skills they get, about how much effort they put. Do they do 30 minutes on the homework or 45 minutes? Do they really need to be in their maths? These are investment decisions, and it's really hard for them to make those decisions if they don't know what the labour market's got to offer. And it's really difficult. Their aspirations are all really clustered together on very traditional things. And this is where Pierre Bourdieu and George, the poet, are absolutely right. People matter. It's about careers, but also it's about authentic, first-hand, real-world exposures to the labour markets. They can see for themselves and make better informed choices about what they're doing and how they might do it. And we can see it in the earnings premiums they get, the more engagement they have while they're at school. Secondly, about the competition, they're leaving school now competing with older workers for jobs. They need to be ready to be able to apply for jobs. They need to be ready to, cope in an interview. Look at the apprenticeships. 40% of apprentices are over 25. 2/3 of them are already in work before they get the apprenticeship. Young people need far more cannier and savvier about navigating their way through. It's hard for them. They need to be resilient because they're going to be suffering in terms of their aspirations are very high, but their chances of short-term unemployment is very, very high too. And finally, employers becoming more demanding. Andreas likes to talk about the good employers now, the jobs with real prospects require young people to be personally effective, applying their knowledge in new and different situations. That's enterprise learning. There's a real case for this. And so over the last few years, we've been trying to understand these changes and frame them in ways which make sense to us and allow us to think, well, it's just more is more in all of this. We don't know how much, we just need to do more and more of this material. Anyway, so that's what I've got to say. I'm very interested to hear what you've got to think about.